What is one thing that is objectively true to you that no one can tell you otherwise? I'll go first. Med school is not for the faint of heart. I will say this time and time again. I've been in med school for like almost 5 years now, and I will say this: it is one of the most intensive degrees ever. I will say yes, there are other degrees that are really like intense too as well. I'm not bashing that, I know, but med school, it's something else. And I'll tell you why. I know a common thing that people talk about is that they don't think that the content is like difficult in med school, but rather the volume. And yeah, I think that's very true, especially in the first, what, 2 or 3 years where you're in preclinical years and you're just doing mainly lectures. There is some integration with like practical stuff, and you do get an insight into that type of thing. But as time goes on and you get into your clinical years, although that's supposed to be like where you're more being immersed into the clinical world, if I may say, you're now juggling still doing lectures and being on placement, which is actually quite hard to do. I will say you do get used to it as time goes on, but when you really start to see like, I guess your career is in your face now. It's not the same as before where you kind of romanticized it or had an idea of what you thought it was like from your work experience or your snapshots from that. But you're now seeing like the intensity of how it can actually be. You're seeing the doctors every day. You're seeing what they go through. You're seeing how you yourself are going to interact with patients. And it is an basically an unknown road that most people will never experience unless you're in med school. And also with that, I think that the whole aspect of juggling, not just like the being a student aspect, but there's the life aspect, and realizing that it is actually a lot more difficult to be able to juggle those aspects. I don't know why it's like this, but I think it's just that they probably want you to try and get used to the idea of being, a medical professional. But there are certain aspects like you can't really figure out your timetable sometimes. You don't know if you're gonna be doing something. You Most people have to plan their weeks a week in advance if they can, even that. Um, which is something that I'm now realizing how difficult it actually can be. And no one will actually talk to you about the traveling that you'll have to do because with placement in particular, maybe some med schools are quite different, but I have noticed that you do have to travel to really far places or distances to get to hospitals. And if you do not have a car, I will repeat, if you do not have a car, you will be using public transport, and there's nothing wrong with that, to be quite honest. But now you've got the added uncertainty of if there's going to be strikes on, or if how you're going to get to that place, if that place is like really secluded or in the middle of nowhere, which there are a lot of hospitals or even a lot of healthcare facilities that are really in the middle of nowhere. Um, and you'll be traveling for hours beforehand. If I want to go to a placement that happens to be more than 2 hours away, I am waking up 4 in the morning to get there on time because I don't want to be late because you want to be professional. And that is realities that you have to think about. And there's also expenses and costs for getting to travel. Luckily, I do have like reimbursement, but for others, that's not always the case. They do have to do that. And that can be a hidden cost within medical school that people don't actually tend to, I guess, realize about because it is not necessarily that visible when you're applying. And I think, especially because of the current landscape of how medicine is, especially in the UK, I'm saying the word especially a lot. But anyway, the fact that there is a lot of things that are changing within the medical space, and people are realizing now, where do I actually fit in this? Does it fit with me? Am I able to work the rogue hours that exist? Am I able to work what I've seen random TikTok videos are like, well, over like 60-hour work weeks, which isn't normal on the, I guess, the grand scheme of working cultures or environments, but it's almost like a given, like we have to do that in healthcare. You start to realize, okay, if I am trying to actually build a life for myself. Or the whole idea of me going to university in the first place was because I wanted to get an education to get a job, or I had a specific vocation or calling that I felt that was right for me. But I am now seeing how do I actually be able to sustain myself within that environment is something that I think if you are looking into doing a career in healthcare, you need to start to consider. Because right now, there's a lot of a shift, there's like a big change that's happening. And you just have to look at the news to be able to see this in the first place. But once you start seeing this, you have to start really realizing I need to figure out if this is the right thing for me. And that is something I think everybody should be doing, no matter the career choice that you're making. And also understand that you can adapt and change in the best way possible that will be right for you.